What if the thing standing between you and a flatter stomach has less to do with what you eat and almost everything to do with stopping eating at least 3 hours before you go to sleep, something most people never think twice about? Your body has a built-in nightly window where stored belly fat becomes fuel, but that window does not start the moment you fall asleep. It starts only after a very specific hormonal shift happens, one that a late snack can delay for hours. If you have tracked calories carefully, eaten reasonably during the day, but still cannot seem to shrink your midsection, you are not imagining it. Something about your routine may be quietly blocking the process every single night. Maybe you cut your dinner portion smaller, swapped dessert for fruit, or started eating earlier some nights. Each change felt like progress, and yet the belly area barely responded, almost like it was running on different rules. And the strangest part is, your other measurements might even be improving. Energy, sleep, even your arms or legs. But the belly seems to operate on a delay nothing else in your routine seems to touch. But here is what almost nobody connects to this. That stubborn belly fat may have very little to do with your meals during the day, and everything to do with what happens, or does not happen, in the 3 hours before you go to bed. Rachel is 39, works late most evenings, and usually eats dinner around 8 or 9, often with a small snack an hour or two before bed just to settle her stomach before sleep. She switched to smaller dinners, cut out dessert most nights, and started a short evening walk a few times a week. She stayed consistent with all of it for nearly 2 months, expecting steady progress. Her weight held mostly steady, and her belly looked almost exactly the same as when she started. She was not slipping on her plan. Something about the timing of her evenings was working against her without her realizing it. But here is what almost nobody realizes. It was not what Rachel ate for dinner. It was the small snack an hour before bed that was quietly keeping a specific hormone elevated through most of the night. That hormone does not announce itself. There is no signal that says fat burning has been delayed tonight. It just quietly shifts the timeline of what your body does while you sleep night after night. Any food eaten close to bedtime, even something small like crackers or a few bites of ice cream, raises insulin, and insulin needs time to settle back down before your body can shift into its overnight fat-burning mode. And this is where it gets interesting. The amount of time insulin takes to settle after eating lines up almost exactly with that 3-hour window before bed. And missing that window changes more than people expect. When you eat in the evening, glucose enters your bloodstream and your pancreas releases insulin to manage it, just like after any meal. This response typically takes 2 to 3 hours to fully settle back down. While insulin is still elevated, your body stays in a storage and processing state. It is not actively burning stored fat for fuel during this time because insulin signals the body to use incoming glucose first. At the same time, your body releases growth hormone in pulses during early deep sleep, and growth hormone plays a major role in mobilizing stored fat to be used as fuel throughout the night. Here is the connection. Growth hormone and insulin work in opposite directions. When insulin is still elevated from a late snack, it directly blunts how much growth hormone your body releases during those early sleep cycles. Stay with me here, because the 3-hour window is not arbitrary. It is roughly how long it takes insulin from a typical evening meal or snack to drop low enough for growth hormone release to happen normally. If you stop eating 3 hours before bed, insulin has time to settle before you fall asleep, which means your overnight fat-burning window can start almost as soon as you enter deep sleep instead of being delayed. During that properly timed window, growth hormone rises, fat cells release stored energy, and your body uses that fat as a primary fuel source for several hours while you rest, with no extra effort required. Eat something within that 3-hour buffer, even something small, and insulin stays elevated longer, growth hormone release gets blunted, and the window either starts late or gets meaningfully shorter for that night. Think of it like a relay race. Insulin has to hand off the baton to growth hormone before fat burning can run its leg of the race. A late snack delays that handoff, and the runner waiting to take over simply starts later, or sometimes not at all. It often starts with a late dinner that runs past 8 or 9, pushed later by work or a busy evening, which immediately shortens the buffer between the last bite of food and bedtime. Then comes the bedtime snack, something small to settle the stomach or satisfy a craving. Crackers, a handful of cereal, a square of chocolate. None of it feels like a real meal, but insulin responds anyway. Weekend nights often add another layer, a late dessert while watching a movie, or drinks and snacks that run later than usual. quietly shrinking that 3-hour buffer even further on the nights meant to be relaxing. Eating in front of a screen makes this worse too, since distracted eating often leads to extra bites without noticing, each one resetting the insulin clock a little closer to bedtime than intended. And none of this feels like overeating or a mistake. It feels completely normal. But there is a simple way to protect that overnight window without changing anything about what or how much you eat during the day. Here is the reframe. This is not about eating less or being hungry at night. Your body is simply responding to when insulin gets triggered, and the timing of your last bite determines when your fat-burning window can actually begin. The body is not stalling on purpose. It is following the same hormonal sequence every single night. Change when that sequence starts, and the rest of the night follows a completely different pattern. The single biggest lever here is establishing a consistent 3-hour buffer between your last bite of food and your bedtime, regardless of what that food is, so insulin has time to settle before you fall asleep. If your evenings currently include eating closer to bedtime than that, this is very likely the missing piece, not a sign that your body has stopped responding, just a piece of timing you did not have before. The solution is simple. Set a cutoff time 3 hours before your usual bedtime and stop eating after that point, including small snacks, until morning. This does not mean an early dinner has to be small or restrictive. It means whatever your last meal is, it happens with enough runway before sleep for insulin to come back down naturally. If hunger shows up close to bedtime, water, plain tea, or sparkling water without sugar are good options that do not raise insulin, letting your body still settle into its natural overnight rhythm. Most people notice a difference within the first 1 to 2 weeks, often in how flat their stomach feels in the morning. Over 3 to 4 weeks of consistency, visible changes around the midsection tend to follow. Picture a store closing for the night, so the overnight restocking crew can come in and refill the shelves properly. If the store stays open late with customers still coming in, the crew never gets a clean window to finish the job. Your body works the same way. The 3-hour buffer is like closing the store early enough that the overnight crew, in this case growth hormone and fat burning, has a full uninterrupted window to do its work. Or think of it like a dimmer switch on insulin. Eating closer to bed keeps that dimmer turned up high through much of the night. Stopping early lets the dimmer turn all the way down, opening the path for fat burning to take over. Once you see your evenings this way, the 3-hour window becomes the simplest lever in the whole process. And no, this does not mean one late snack ruins everything. It just means that night's window opened a little later than it could have. The first step is picking your bedtime and counting back 3 hours to set your cutoff time for eating. The second step is simply respecting that cutoff most nights, even if dinner has to shift slightly earlier to make room for it. Watch for the proof over the next 2 weeks: a flatter feeling stomach in the mornings, steadier energy before bed. If you slip on a late snack one night, the next night is simply the next chance to protect the window. A few weeks in, Rachel moved her dinner up by an hour and stopped her bedtime snack entirely. She kept everything else the same. Within a month, her midsection looked noticeably different for the first time in over a year. This is not a shortcut, and it is not magic. It is giving your body a clean, uninterrupted window to do something it already does every night on its own. Some nights will be easier than others, and that is completely normal. Tonight, pick your bedtime, count back 3 hours, and treat that as your cutoff for eating. That one boundary is the entire starting point. No other change is needed. Your body has a fat-burning window built in every single night. It was never missing, it was just starting late. Now that you know what controls the timing, protecting it is simply a matter of when you stop eating.